Lots of games include some kind of multiplayer mode because people coming together to experience the beauty of play is one of the fundamental things that makes us human. Also, it's meant to stop people trading in the game the second they finish the campaign. But not all those games just take the single-player experience and tack on a team deathmatch. Some games experiment with novel ideas and gameplay mechanics, creating unique multiplayer modes which then, for various reasons, fall out of favour, or at least out of fashion. More's the pity. Here are 7 of our favourites. Enjoy, and beware minor spoilers for the following. But it's multiplayer modes, how are they going to be? Oh no, here it comes. I'm looking at this list now. These are all games with stories that you could spoil, but we're talking about the multiplayer modes that have no bearing on it. Maybe the fact that the guy in Driver San Francisco is in a coma, that's the premise of the game, it's not a spoiler. But I mean, what, Battlestations Pacific? Is it spoilers for the Second World War? What if you don't know how that ended? Yeah, spoilers there. So watch out, I guess, if you've never read or watched anything.
In San Francisco, each morning as the sun rises over the bay, I've got one thing on my mind. I will track down my fugitive and bring justice to the city.
Driver San Francisco wasn't really concerned with being a realistic depiction of driving in San Francisco. Otherwise they'd have had to call it Uber Driver San Francisco. Easily the least realistic thing in the game though, even less realistic than seeing a pristine 1983 DeLorean driving around in 2011, was the fact that you could instantly shift your consciousness between vehicles at will, possessing their drivers, because your character Tanner was in a sort of magic coma.
Tanner!
It's like that old TV show Quantum Leap, only it makes even less sense. It was called the shift mechanic, which only made it more confusing given that shifting gears is already a thing in driving. Not only is shift the weirdest thing about Driver San Francisco, but it also makes the game utterly unique in the field of driving games.
You alright?
Steady! That guy's in pretty bad shape back there.
Damn it, Ray! What the hell are you doing? What are you stopping for? Where the hell?
When it came to adding multiplayer though, it would have been easy for Ubisoft Reflections to abandon the complicated shift feature entirely. The fact that this multiplayer mode appears on this list though, and not one called 7 generic multiplayer modes too tedious for this world, suggests they didn't. And no, we're not making that list. Don't pretend you'd watch it. Yes, unless you specifically chose to deactivate it, shift was enabled in all of the multiplayer modes for Driver San Francisco, even the races. That meant if you lagged behind, you could simply shift and grab a car closer to the front. It was used to best effect in tag mode, where one player is it and the rest are trying to crash into them to claim the crown. The addition of shift meant as soon as you missed careening into your target, you could switch to another car and try again. The result was loads of cars flying in from more angles than you'd find in a cubist painting. Shift mode in Driver San Francisco elevated it above the other racing game online modes of the time and cemented its place in history, keeping it well clear of that hypothetical list of tedious generic multiplayer modes. Look, I told you we're not doing it. Ugh, fine. Alright, number 1, Team Deathmatch.
Behind the mask lies their real nature. This is a truth often realized in one's final breath.
Traditionally, being a murderer is a solo endeavour. I think once there's more than a couple of you, you're a Scream movie, or possibly a D&D party. All that changed in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which added a suite of multiplayer modes to the game where you finally had the chance to assassinate your friends like they were a 15th century Roman cardinal. The idea of the multiplayer mode was that it was a virtual reality Templar training program run by Abstergo, in which all their wannabe hitmen faced off against each other inside the Animus to hone their skills.
For centuries, we have fought against the Assassins. Now, fellow Templars, we will win this war once and for all.
What made this mode unique was that rather than everyone just running around and wildly stabbing each other with various pointy implements, the multiplayer modes in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood had a heavy emphasis on stealth, patience, and blending into a crowd. Before a match, each player had to choose a character, and then the level was populated with numerous clones of that character controlled by the computer, who went about their business normally like NPCs in the main game. You were given another player to eliminate and were likewise being hunted by someone else in the server with the aim of killing your target without giving away your identity in the process. To succeed, you had to blend in to try and get close to your target, walking slowly in loops, stopping in crowds, and generally acting like an NPC while trying to figure out who your target was before killing them without attracting attention. You got extra points for playing the game in the stealthiest manner possible, and when you got a good game, there really was nothing else like it. A tense cat-and-mouse experience as you moved slowly through the levels, scanning everyone for any sign of human control or unusual behaviour, thinking you're about to assassinate a rival before discovering that it's actually a hologram and you're about 2 seconds away from an unexpected rooftop tracheotomy. The problem with the mode was that you really needed everyone to be on the same page for it to work, much like Hitman 2's Ghost mode.
Get over it!
Never. When everyone was playing it properly, it worked super well, but once someone started just sprinting around the place stabbing people, it all started to break down as there was no way to catch up and take them out without revealing yourself in the process, which led to plenty of games degenerating into the all-out stab fest that Ubisoft was trying to avoid in the first place. The multiplayer mode did resurface in later Assassin's Creeds, but with diminishing returns, before being abandoned entirely in favour of co-op for Assassin's Creed Unity, and nothing for Assassin's Creed Syndicate. So it looks like we may never see this collection of great ideas come together into the world-beating multiplayer mode we know it could have become. Still, I guess it means that no one's training the Templars anymore, so every cloud, right? They're still the bad guys, aren't they?
Attacking the area. Security breach. Shit, I've got movement. Where? Everywhere. Contact!
The classic asymmetric multiplayer experience is a game of hide and seek, like you played when you were a kid. The problem with hide and seek, though, was that no one had night vision goggles.
I can initiate it.
And people were very uncool if you jumped on them. The Splinter Cell series remedied both of those deficiencies with its Spies vs Mercs multiplayer mode, which was a kind of high-stakes online hide and seek in which players became stealthy spies or shooty mercs. While spies had to infiltrate a level, hiding in the shadows and pursuing their cool espionage-based objectives, the armoured mercs had to scour the level for sneaky spies and, wherever possible, shoot them a lot. Spies vs Mercs mode pulled off the clever trick of being asymmetric but balanced, with each side enjoying a completely different experience, and it was more tense than watching a Great British Bake Off finale on 3 espressos.
Hostile dead.
The mode first appeared in the second Splinter Cell game, Pandora Tomorrow, and most recently in 2013's Splinter Cell Blacklist. Since then, it has quietly gone into partial to total retirement, partly because we haven't had a Splinter Cell game for 7 long years. I know, right? What the hell? And partly because these days you'd be hard-pressed to find an online server with enough players to populate a match of Spies v Mercs, which means until we get a new Splinter Cell, it's back to hide and seek for me. Only now, thanks to internet shopping, I've got night vision goggles.
Jane?
Remember the Nintendo Wii U? It was a bit like the Switch, only you couldn't play it in bed because the stupid controller signal wouldn't reach. The key thing about the Wii U, though, was that it allowed the console to display one thing on the television and something entirely different on the screen built into the Wii U pad. London-based zombie survival game Zombiu made brilliant use of this, placing a bunch of vital survival mechanics on the controller. Speaking as a Londoner, that's either a zombie apocalypse or just kicking out time at the pubs. What people tend to forget is that Zombiu also had an excellent local 2-player competitive mode that took similar advantage of a console that might as well have been built specifically for asymmetric multiplayer. The player playing with a regular controller on the television is called the Survivor, and their job is some fairly straightforward rootin' zombie shooting. Victory conditions in the various modes include survival time, number of kills, and capturing flags. The other player has control of the Wii U pad with its own screen and can spend resources to place zombies of differing strengths in the arena. This player is ceremonially dubbed the King of the Zombies. You know, I never had zombies down as monarchists. More sort of anarchists, sort of libertarians maybe? They're definitely keen on the freedom to eat brains. King of the Zombies mode was a novel, entertaining multiplayer mode, and although it didn't get an online version when the game was re-released on Xbox and PS4 as Zombie, because it's a local multiplayer mode and there are no servers to shut down, this unique asymmetric multiplayer mode lives on and can be played even today. You just have to buy a Wii U. Yeah, it's dead, isn't it?
Gotham isn't a city anymore. It's a battleground. And whoever controls the most turf is going to rule this whole town.
Batman Arkham Origins is the least fondly regarded of the Batman Arkham series, thanks to it not being developed by Rocksteady, not having Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill reprise their roles as Batman and the Joker, and breaking decades of Batman mystique by revealing that he's a fan of terrible puns.
Street tough named Lester Baczynski calls himself Electrocutioner. Shocking.
What you might not remember about Batman Arkham Origins is that it included a multiplayer mode, and what's more, that multiplayer mode is remembered extremely fondly by those who played it. The premise for the game was a turf war between the Joker's gang and Bane's gang. Each round consisted of 3 players playing as Joker thugs, and 3 players playing as Bane thugs trying to complete an objective. At various points in the game, each team could also call on their respective supervillain to make things easier with their supervillain powers, like being armed with a rocket launcher or having a pipe.
Must I do everything myself?
Money clearly tight over at Joker Enterprises. That wasn't all though. There was a third 2-player team in the game who played as Batman and Robin, and whose job was to fill their intimidation meter by taking down gang members in various stealthy or cool ways. Team Bat was awarded fewer points each time they used the same takedown, so Batman and Robin had to keep changing up their tactics and trying new things to stay competitive, while still staying cautious and avoiding head-on confrontations. Getting killed while playing on the Batman team gave you a massive score penalty and often took you out of contention for winning, regardless of how well you were doing before. Meanwhile, the thugs had to be on constant lookout for the dynamic duo, because getting taken down not only left their team at a temporary numbers disadvantage, but also made it more likely Team Batman would win. Which, I mean, they've already got Batman on their team. They don't need any more help. While it was full of good ideas, Arkham Origins multiplayer mode was also full of problems. Even at the height of the game's popularity, it was hard to find a game with the requisite 8 players. Players would get booted mid-match for seemingly no reason, and the netcode led to some problems with collision detection and takedown tracking that made the whole thing feel looser and more frustrating than it should have. Plus, and let's be honest here, the reason people buy a Batman game is to play as Batman. When 7/8 of the people playing the game aren't getting to do that, you can only think that your multiplayer mode's days are numbered. But until someone comes up with a better idea for a multiplayer Batman game, this is the best we've got. Or it would be if the servers hadn't been shut down in 2016. Still, fingers crossed that a future Batman game revisits the idea, maybe with a fairer distribution of Batmen. Or Batman Royale, 100 Batmans on an island, rapidly shrinking safe zone, floss emote. You're welcome, WB Games.
Who's that?
My boy.
Cute kid. You leave him behind?
He's dead. Dad had killed him. And his mother.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Don't be. We're not friends.
As the galaxy's least fortunate ship systems engineer, Isaac Clarke simply cannot catch a break. Through Dead Spaces 1 and 2, he's tormented by monstrous space zombies that would give John Carpenter's Thing a run for its money. As well as nightmarish visions of his dead girlfriend.
It spoke to me.
What did it say, Isaac? What did it say to you, Isaac? Isaac, can you hear me?
When Dead Space 3 rolled around though, it seemed like at least Isaac would have a reassuring buddy amidst the constant threat of dismemberment, because for the first time in the series, there was a co-op mode featuring burly space soldier John Carver.
Stay focused. We've got this.
But old Isaac should have known better than to get his hopes up for Sergeant Carver to be a grounding, calming influence who might ward off Clarke's horror show hallucinations.
No, not again.
Because in a cute twist for a story-led co-op campaign, Clarke and Carver would each regularly see scary stuff that the other could not, with each character being separately haunted by their respective grim backstories.
Hey, if you're seeing something that isn't there, you need to tell me, okay, Carver?
Whatever you're seeing, it's not real, man. You gotta trust me here.
You okay?
That is to say, the game would show the player controlling Clark one version of a scene, and the player controlling Carver another version.
Hey. Hey!
Is everything all right?
There's a woman out there.
As far as cop gimmicks go, this was an inventive gambit for the Dead Space series.
What? What is it?
What are you afraid of? He's waiting for you.
You okay?
Too bad it wasn't available in split screen, which would have been an interesting way to see both sides of the story, and too bad Dead Space 3 didn't set the world on fire, and too bad that consequently there's no Dead Space 4 coming anytime soon, if ever. So Isaac, sweetie, if you were hoping for a happy ever after in the next one, I wouldn't hold your breath. Sorry, dude. He'll tire himself out eventually.
Military strategy games definitely have their fans, but for our money it's always been a bit more fun to do the shooting yourself than ordering someone else to do the shooting for you. Battlestations Pacific solved this problem by creating a World War II strategy game where at any point you could take control of an air or sea unit and do the actual combat yourself. So, not only do you get to be Admiral Nimitz in charge of the fleet, you also get to be... Were there any famous World War II fighter races? Tom Hardy from Dunkirk. This was all plenty of fun in single player, but it really came into its own in multiplayer, where you could participate in competitive battles with other players that would test both your combat skills and your strategic nous. Great! I can finally prove that I'm not only stupid, but I also have terrible reflexes. And they say I can't multitask. And while the previous game, Battlestations Midway, was structured similarly, the action was nowhere near as spectacular as this sequel, Battlestations Pacific, which allowed for enormous air and sea encounters with an entire screen full of units in action at any one time on a humble Xbox 360. And the best part was, this being the Pacific Theatre, if you were bad at the game, like me, and happened to be playing as the Japanese Imperial Navy, you could just pick a kamikaze unit and point your plane at the nearest ship. I helped! Sadly, the Battlestations series never sold quite as well as the Battlefield series, which had all of the shooting and a lot less of the strategizing. While the first two games are backwards compatible on Xbox One, the multiplayer servers are empty, and Eidos closed the studio that made the games mere months after the release of Pacific. As a result, you'll likely never see another Battlestations game. Still, look on the bright side, we haven't had a sequel to World War II either.
Hey, thanks for watching this video about the multiplayer modes that were too beautiful for this world, gone before their time. Maybe you can think of ones that you miss. Why don't you let us know in the comments? And if you want to watch more videos, what's kind of like multiplayer mode is our weekly shows. We've got Show of the Week up here, which is live now. So imagine that. You can watch it live, or you can watch it on demand. That's also good. And it's got all three of us in it, so it's like a 3-player multiplayer mode. But for 2-player multiplayer mode, you can try the Outside Extra Show of the Weekend, which is down here, and it's very fun. You should check it out. Thanks for watching.